good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stephanie Dahl. I am the Western Regional Manager for the Argen Corporation, and I have the pleasure this morning of introducing Jeff Rounds. Jeff is our manager of the research and development team and a tremendous asset to Argen. So for all of you who've used our zirconia, and for those of you who are beta testing our HT Plus multi-layer right now, Jeff is the one who spends his time painstakingly evaluating shades and making changes so everything comes to you in an unbelievable result. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Jeff and let him get started. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephanie, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I thank you for joining and welcome you for joining our product demo this morning. There's a little bit different format than all of us are used to, but we'll do our best. This is about as hands-on as we can get, I suppose. So today we'll be taking a look at our product demo for the Argen HT Plus multi-layer. You saw Jack Morano tease this back in Chicago in simpler times where we were able to see each other. Unfortunately, our project got a little bit delayed because of global pandemic, but we're back on track and due to making very good progress with this and due to launch very, very, very soon. And if you notice, I'm sitting in the big man's chair here behind the Argen logo. So if I get the hook and get kicked out here, that's Mr. Anton Wolf needing his chair back. So I've been very fortunate to be a part of the development of this product. I've been fortunate to work alongside some of the industry legends like Paul Cascone and Jeff Lothorpe to develop this product. And as we see these zirconia materials evolve, it's very encouraging to see some of the aesthetic results that we would never ever expected, especially 20 years ago when everything was very monochromatic, very off shade. So again, hopefully very, very soon we'll be pulling this tag that says in development, making great progress with this project. It's in a beta and getting excellent feedback from our value beta customers. So my agenda today was to introduce you to the product, to give you an overview since this is a new product. Those of you who may not know exactly what it is. And I'll walk you through some of the development. And along the development, I'll introduce you to some of the challenges in the marketplace that our customers have heard with these multi-layer materials and with the application of it. So I'll give you an overview of the product, walk you through the development. I'll kind of end with some guidance on how to use it and how to get the best results for your lab and your workflow. We'll see a couple of cool photos because I know you want to see pictures of it throughout the presentation. And then at the end, we'll give you an option to ask any questions if those happen to arrive. And we would prefer if you submit those through the Q&A. So at the end, we'll take a couple of questions if you have them. Apologize, going back here. So Argen HT Plus multi-layer. So our HT Plus has been a successful product for a few years, and even more so, the HT Plus pre-shaded. So our Argen HT Plus multi-layer is multi, and I emphasize multi-layer polychromatic pre-shaded material. As these products evolve, we recognize more and more of a demand for the pre-shaded materials as the white materials with the liquids tend to fade a little bit. People are adopting the pre-shaded materials a little more. And part of the delay in the development is we really had to nail it with this product for you guys to be able to have some successful results. So this is our high strength zirconia with an aesthetic focus. You may be familiar with our STML. There's a little bit different application. The STML, as beautiful as it is limited to 3 units. This product can be used anywhere in the mouth. It's a 1250 MPa, 45% translucency, which tends to be the sweet spot. So we intend this to be the laboratory workhorse. You get enough opacity and enough translucency that it really can be used anywhere. When our offering is available, it will be with 16 shades plus 3 bleaches and in 7 disc thicknesses. You'll see me address that a little bit later. And it'll be very, very soon in disc format and also through Argen Digital. So for our valued Argen Digital customers, and there's definitely some benefit there without having to carry all shades. You can submit your B4s, your D4s, your random ones through Argen Digital without having to stock multiple sizes of the less popular shades. Now, one of the things I wanted to address real quick is that this is a homogeneous 4Y material. So you've heard Mr. Paul Gascon address before that this is becoming a more popular way, more common way to classify zirconia is the Y factor. It's often called a 4Y or a Y4. Now that's the mole percent in yttria as opposed to a weight percentage of yttria. Traditionally, yttria stabilizes the zirconia, and for the most part, the higher percentage of yttria, more translucency, and it comes at a cost of strength. That's where we've seen the success with the HT Plus being a 4Y. It's a nice balance to become that laboratory workhorse. So along the way, we have identified in developing this product, we identified some challenges with these multi-layer materials and pre-shaded materials. And a big one was shade inaccuracy. So we took a very close look at all the competitor products on the market. And we saw really that the fundamentals really weren't there of if you can't hit the shade, really it's not very usable. It's tough to alter a shade of a pre-shaded material very much. So that was basically step one. Now we had a big advantage there with you basing this off of our HT Plus pre-shaded material. We had already had very good shade accuracy, and we used this in one of the many layers of the multi-layer material. One of the issues we saw, aside from a skewed hue, was a lack of chroma. We see some of these that just want to be impressive and have all this incisal, but you really are starting to get a low value effect there. You're starting to really lack the chroma and miss that hue, which makes it not very usable. A lot of post-processing work to be able to finish this and deliver it to your doctors. Now, the big one we hear from a lot of customers is a very harsh line or transition from the dentin and enamel, which presents a lot of challenge for a couple of things. It presents some nesting challenges and some anxiety with where to place your connectors. So you place them too high and you're risking your connectors into a weak part of the disc, or you get it too low and maybe you get not enough incisal. So this was a big concern with these products. And you see this right here. Unfortunately, my line's kind of identifying that harsh line in a competitor product, but I can't grab the line and move it very easily for you to see it. But this is one of the competitors' products on the market, and this is one of the things we hear a lot. So this was one of the challenges we really aimed when speccing out and designing this product to really solve. And number one was the limited size offering. So as you know, the hybrid, the all-on-4, all-on-6 cases are becoming a really growing segment of the market. And there wasn't a product out there that really addressed it and really nailed it for these guys doing this type of stuff. And so I'll show you just a little bit later how we approached that and developed this material and one of the disc sizes in this material to really hit that and really nail that. So we started with the fundamentals. If it doesn't hit the shade, I mean, how do you even proceed? So take a look at the photo on the left. Now this is a very early photo in R&D. Notice these photos aren't spectacular marketing photos. They are R&D photos, so maybe a little blurry, a little out of touch sometimes. But the photo on the left, now we're in the ballpark as far as value and hue. Here's where we had the big advantage with using the HT Plus pre-shaded. Now that HT Plus pre-shaded material lies somewhere in the middle. We had to develop obviously a chroma and an incisal, and that came a little later, but we had to start with the shade's got to be accurate. So what we saw, there's another competitor unit there on the right. And what we saw in the market was a lot of shades tend to lean a little yellow. A lot of them tend to lean a little pink. You see the one on the right tends to lean a little on the pink side, and I believe this is a C shade. That's going to be a challenge to gray green that unit out to be able to deliver that to the doctor without getting too much verbal abuse. So the key in developing all of this with achieving a nice incisal that really popped, but keeping it smooth enough to be very forgiving was these transitional layers. Now, emphasis on layers. This was extremely painful development in getting these layers just right. Now, getting these transitional layers, this is incisal transition layers, are typical of what we refer to as our transition layers, and our dentin transition layers into the dentin. Now, the key here was getting that just right. Too short, and that created that really harsh transition to the incisal, and too long, it created a really long blend, which started to look monochromatic and started to lower the value, and just really wasn't that impressive. And the customer still had to put some chroma stain on. So the key was that transitional layer really being dialed in and approached from the mindset of a ceramist, to be honest. Let's see. So I'll take a close look here on some of the layer thicknesses across our 12, 14, and 16. So as you know, 12, 14, and 16 are probably going to be, the data supports that they're the most common everyday used discs in the lab. Now, if you take a close look, the transitional layers all maintain across the thicknesses a very consistent size. They grow just a little bit in proportion, but it would have been very easy to gradiate these as just on a proportional or linear fashion from top to bottom. But what it would miss was that ever so important transitional layer, which creates that nice incisal impact. It gives you the forgiveness in the blend. So across the 12, 14, and 16, which is going to be most of the discs used in the lab, they really maintain that consistency across there. Of course, you see the incisal grow a little bit and the dentin grow a little bit, but it really maintains the consistency and that really natural blend that we found to be the sweet spot. So a quick photo here of a unit with very tall cusps. I know we all wish we'd get these in the laboratory because sometimes they rarely look like this with these tall buccal and lingual cusps. But we had to approach this again as a traditional ceramist. So that blend right there and those transitional layers are very consistent with how a ceramist would typically layer dentin, cut it back, and start laying the enamel. And that's with a traditional 2 or 3 layer cutback. Of course, some of the higher end stuff gets a little more involved, but that's very consistent with where a ceramist would layer the dentin up, so enough to cover their framework and not get a opaque showing through their framework, but still give enough enamel and enough incisal properties to those cusps. Quick look at this, the occlusal view of some single units. So the photo on the left there shows, for the sake of demonstration, we entered some layers in the CAM software so you can kind of see where it would, where that nested unit would achieve certain different layers. Now those layers aren't precisely exact, but it gives you an idea. So this unit is placed up high enough to where these tall cusps with this unit grab that incisal, and you see the darker spots down in those transitional layers. If you take a look at the photos on the right, there's a lighter shade and the darker shade where you can see that in that central fossa, you can see that warmth. Now, if this had been a harsh line where there's a material with a harsh incisal and that harsh transition to the gingival, the dentinal colors, you would either be showing the occlusal or the color on that prep in the dye influence show through, or you would miss having any sort of enamel at all. So this transitional layer, very forgiving with the posteriors. With a high strength material, we know this is going to see a lot of posterior units, and that gives you a very natural. And just to kind of reiterate here, or just to point out that none of my photos here have any stain. These are 100% glaze. That occlusal warmth in that central fossa is 100% out of the furnace. A couple of photos quickly on the transitional layers. So you see that same unit there on the left in a little bit lighter shade. Still a nice natural blend, still impressive enamel on those buccal cusps. And then onto some of the anteriors, you see in the center, about around the center or the incisal third of that disc, you still get a very natural blend consistent with where the ceramics would cut that back and layer it. You still get the incisal you need for a high strength material it's very tough to achieve, but the key was all in those transitional layers. A couple more photos of some single centrals. In anterior units. So on the left, we have a little bit darker shade, an A3. Now this unit was nested right in the middle of a disc. I think this was a 14 unit. Still captures the nice blend. You got the nice chroma color down at the gingival, and very natural, very smooth, but it's still very distinct incisal. Now the A2 on the right, a little bit lighter shade, which sometimes are tougher to photograph. This one was placed a little higher in the disc. Now we recognize some of the behaviors in the market where some people like to move it upwards. And this was a response for some of the other materials on the market that required that. So some of the labs typically take these units, push them all the way to the top, and they want as much incisal as possible. Now that's perfectly fine. A lot of times in the laboratory, on the RX, you get a shade that says incisal half of D2. That's very common. Incisal half of an A2. Or you just want a little more incisal. So that A2 there on the right is moved all the way up. That transition blend is still forgiving enough to not be a harsh line that now moves down towards the gingival. It just gives you a nice, consistent blend that's consistent with where a ceramist would cut back and layer that. On to our 18s and 20s. So the 18s and 20s, and these are going to be the discs that are going to be your large bridges. This is going to be, your large bridges where you have maybe a longer ovate pontic. Maybe you start to get into some bridges that have a little bit of curvature of the occlusal. You notice the transition layers remain consistent across these two as well. Of course, into the 20, you start to get a little bit more generous incisal layer where if you want to move that up, you can. But it's very forgiving across any of the bridges with very deep. Say you got a ovate pontic that's very long. You get down into the dentin layers, it's some nice chroma, but the transitional layers are key. Now some of the full arches, here again, this was another challenge we heard with some of the materials with that really harsh line. When you start to get full arch cases with a Curva Spee and Curva Wilson, it becomes a challenge. So for example, the photo on the left, it's a pretty significant Curva Spee. If you were to nest that to where you just want enough in those centrals, what's going to happen is you're going to have your premolars with way too much incisal, maybe showing prep underneath if those are abutment teeth rather than pontics. And you're missing, you got a crooked line there on the first molar, and the second molar, you're missing some altogether. It's going to be a big challenge when you start to get some occlusal curvature. Same thing with the Curva Wilson there. You're going to get a little more pronounced buccal cusp on your posteriors. With a very pronounced incisal across your lower anteriors, you'll probably get a decent result. But the posteriors are just going to start to look weird, and your premolars may miss them altogether. But this was one of the big challenges we heard and listened to the laboratories on some of the application side, and one of the challenges they were dealing with. And again, in some of these multi-material products, when you get the connectors up into that high part of the disc, you start to lose strength. So we saw a lot of nesting anxiety from some of these customers going, well, I really need full arch case. It's got to be strong. Really, the connectors for these bridge really needs to be down low. You know, sometimes you don't always have that option, and it becomes a challenge with the full arch cases. Now, a big growing segment of the market is the 25 millimeter discs. So these hybrid cases have been growing very strong with the big all-on-4, all-on-6 cases. And so this one was designed specifically for those cases. You see the transitional layers up to where the teeth need to be, a very generous incisal, and then a strong, long dentin layer. And this is where traditionally, you saw Jack Morano last week mention this is where he likes to actually not use a pink, but he likes to layer right over that color because it is essentially a natural bone color. They like to layer over. So the blend is right there in the incisal third. And one of the advantages on cases like this with a 4Y that's all the way through There's no nesting challenges, and you don't have any risk of any type of warpage. You don't have any risk of a unit of that size and that caliber coming out not fitting your verification jig. So the nesting guidance I have, so I know I got into some of the very focused on some of these traditional layers, but the goal here is really not to overthink it. So we believe we did the heavy lifting for you. Now this polychromatic material, that's what we intend to be the lab workhorse. Of course, the shade's got to be right on. And this transitional layer is key. But the best recommendation I have for every laboratory would use the thinnest disc possible and nest it right in the middle. Those transitional layers are the sweet spot that allow you to have some flexibility and some forgiveness in the units, to be able to hide that occlusal of the prep, get the enamel, the incisal transition that you need, and it also allows for the flexibility if you want. You know, we're aware that a good portion of the market likes to move this around up or down. So still being able to move this up, you still capture those transitional layers, you'll still get a normal blend without moving a harsh line down. If we were to have gone with just a very linear gradient from top to bottom, what you would have is a very low value. You'd have a really long incisal, and you'd have to do some staining to capture that chroma. I think we've got a few more minutes. So some of the key takeaways today, and I'll kind of wrap with this, is really keep it simple. So give you some of the background on how we developed this product, and just really where some of the heavy focus was really the usability. It was engineered for all types of users. The type of user that's a very quick workflow and wants to mill and send it out, and the type that like to customize a little bit. The guys that like to move it up or down, like I was just showing you in the last slide. Now, I didn't need to spend, I don't think this warranted an additional slide, but sintering. And one of the nice parts of this product is sinters alongside the HT Plus pre-shaded and HT Plus white. There's no new cycles. There's nothing new or particular about this. This was developed with the HT Plus pre-shaded materials. So it presents no big issues with sintering. Like I said, I don't think I would warrant it even really a separate slide, because there's really no changes there. And that, for the most part, wraps mine. You can expect to see this product early 2021. Do believe it's gonna solve a lot of those issues we brought up in the marketplace. Now, if any questions have come up on here, I'm happy to take them.
Jeff, it looks like we do have a question here. It says, how many pontics can be used in a posterior and anterior bridge that have the needed connector size?
Okay, that's a great question. Thanks, Scott. Really, there's not a whole lot of limits there. As long as you have the bulk and have the mass there and have the good connector size, you can do. We've done full arches with these. We've done full roundhouses. We've had, you have all on fours where you have a full arch on 4 implants. So as long as you have the mass there, as long as you have the connector size there, there really is not a whole lot of limit, especially in the anterior, a little more flexible there. The 12 and the 14, we knew that would be well received, because some of the competitors are only offering you an 18 and a 20, or a 16 and a 20. And at that point, you're buying a little more extra disc than you really need. So with the 12 millimeter, the data supports that most traditional, all your workflow, all your bread and butter units fit in those 12s. And even if it's smaller than that, even if you have a posterior unit with a lot of attrition, and it's only 8. The 12 still an excellent choice because you nest it right in the middle, like I suggested. Of course, a unit with some attrition is going to have, because of bruxism, is going to miss some of that enamel, but you still get a very natural, those transitional layers will give you still some sort of a blend without that being a monochromatic type of unit. Again, one of our goals is to solve some of those marketplace problems was to open the offering on the sizes, to give you more options, so you didn't have to buy a whole lot more disc than you really need.
So Jeff, a couple more questions here. When will it be fully available in digital units? And also, when will it be available to order?
So we expect early January. Unfortunately, this year has been a tough one for everybody. So we pushed this back. And again, the combination of it being just a tough year in general, and we really needed to nail this. This couldn't just be a Me Too product that's out there. If it's polychromatic, pre-shaded, it's got to be okay about the labs. So you can expect these. We are doing digital units through beta program at the moment in a limited number of shades, but we can expect this early January, early next year. And the digital units are a great option. Again, when you have a 19 shade offering, we realize some of the smaller guys can't stock 19 shades in 7 sizes. That's a lot of units. So the digital units are great for A4s, for B4s, for D4s, which you may even never see in the laboratory.
And then somebody asked the question, what differences will the average tech or doc see in HT Plus compared to the new HT Multilayered?
Well, the big one is going to be the HT Plus. So the pre-shaded, our previous pre-shaded is a monochromatic. So the design there in a monochromatic was to apply a little stain. And so you have some external stain. And sometimes that might be a little more obvious. The color on with a pre-shaded multi-layer is your color is intrinsic. So your doctor is likely to notice that. And then some of the incisal on the HT Plus pre-shaded monochromatic is a little bit of violet, a little bit blue. So with the color being a little intrinsic, and you also have less color in the incisal, they'll be able to get more of a true incisal from there.
And then there is somebody asking to go over the nesting process again. And for the sake of time, you will have access to this presentation. We'll also be happy to help you individually if you'd like to contact us directly. There was a question about how flexible is the sintering if there's a case that needs to be rushed. Is this able to be sintered more quickly?
Absolutely. So I mentioned that these sinter right alongside our HT Plus. So if you know, we newly have some approved speed cycles. Some of them we have like a 4-hour cycle, and then some even quicker, where you sacrifice a little bit of color in those. But this is perfectly conducive to having great results in those speed cycles. Ideally, the standard 8-hour cycle is preferred. You're going to be your best, most predictable results. Unless you're doing a huge case, you have, of course, the 14-hour cycle, which you're really going to can't rush those real big cases. But yeah, absolutely, it can be in our existing HT Plus speed cycles or quicker cycles that your rep may have, or I believe it's on Argen.com by now.
And then just a clarification from Scott that he's saying, so he could do 4 to 5 pontics on a regular bridge, not only on full arch. Is that correct?
That's correct. As long as you have the correct design. So if you have enough connector space in there, enough mass on a bridge like that, I would obviously recommend doing maybe the long 14-hour cycle. You got to be a little patient with those big ones. But that's not a problem. This is a 1250 MPa. Do the big bridges. Make sure you have enough strength on those abutment teeth and a lot of mass in those connectors in design.
So HT Plus monochromatic will not go away. We'll still carry that. That was a question. And somebody's asking, how does this compare to the existing multi-layer, meaning our STML?
That's a great question. It's a completely different animal. So this is our high strength option. The STML, beautiful material, but you're limited to 3 units, much lower MPA. Yeah, we don't recommend anything more than 3 units, usually towards the anterior on the STML. We learned a lot by developing the STML and developing this product. But it's just a completely different animal, different applications. So what you'll see in this material versus the STML, this material won't be quite as translucent as your STML. It'll be a little more chromatic, overall a lab workhorse because there's really no limitations on where it can be used. We expect to see a lot of these over implants.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap it up due to our time. Thank you again, everybody. And if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to get you more information. These products are available on some limited basis right now through a beta process, which periodically we add people to. So again, please reach out to us directly. We'd love to get you what you need. And of course, Jeff is an email or a phone call away. So Jeff, I'll let you leave with some parting words and we'll wrap it up here.
So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you joining us. Our lab day booth should be accessible to you. I know this was an unusual format, but it's an unusual year. So we really appreciate you attending. And that's all I have for today. Please reach out to your rep or to argen.com or to our virtual booth.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.